Section 12C, Manpower Management. 12.18, Manpower Requirements. Manpower is a constrained resource that comprises a significant portion of the Air Force budget. All missions and programs compete for authorized military and civilian end strength and established grade distributions. Therefore, must comply with guidelines as directed by Congress. Manpower must be programmed in accordance with validated manpower requirements within fiscal limits and acceptable risks, as identified in Defense Planning and Programming Guidance. The Directorate of Manpower, Organization and Resources Program Development Division allocates programmed manpower resources by Command Identifier, Program Element Code, Resource Identification Code, and Country State Code. These manpower resources are translated into manpower authorizations by updating the Unit Manpower document. Major commands should use means other than programmed manpower change requests to accomplish short-term mission or surge workload requirements, such as 1. Use available funds and command civilian employment plans to employ civilians. 2. Use overtime, temporary full-time, part-time, or overhire of civilian personnel. 3. Seek support from the Air Reserve component via military pay appropriation funds. 4. Utilize temporary duty military and civilian personnel. And 5. Seek contract service. Changes to command-specific military and civilian manpower requirements must be validated and approved by Headquarters Air Force before they can be used in the programming and resourcing process. 12.19. Determining manpower requirements. 3 types of manpower are used to conduct the Air Force mission: military personnel, in-service civilian employees, and contracted services. In accordance with Department of Defense guidance, the services assign military personnel only to positions that directly contribute to the prosecution of war, are military by law, custom, or tradition, or are needed for overseas rotation, operational deployment augmentation, or career field sustainment. The Air Force Manpower Requirements Determination process systematically identifies minimum essential manpower required for the most effective and economical accomplishment of approved missions and functions within organizational and resource constraints. Determining the correct military manpower required to meet the Air Force's most stringent wartime missions is key to the national military strategy. The Defense Planning Guidance defines the planning scenarios used to size and shape the total force. Manpower requirements are sized for the most demanding phase of the scenario construct, including rotational forces needed for prolonged conflicts. These scenarios drive force structure and manpower military budgeting decisions. Manpower and organization flight personnel assist Air Force commanders and functional managers by objectively quantifying manpower requirements for the distribution of Air Force manpower resources. Key services of this competency include peacetime manpower standards development, wartime manpower requirements, and commercial services management actions such as public-private competition, insourcing, and business process reengineering. 12.20. Unit Manpower Document. According to AFI 38-201, Management of Manpower Requirements and Authorizations, a manpower requirement is defined as the manpower needed to accomplish a job, mission, or program. A manpower requirement can be documented as a funded manpower authorization or an unfunded requirement. The Unit Manpower Document, UMD, is the primary document that reflects the manpower required to accomplish the unit mission. It is a computer-generated product that lists unit-funded and unfunded manpower requirements used to help manage manpower resources. The UMD contains data elements that identify unique position attributes to include position number, Air Force Specialty Code, Functional Account Code, Office Symbol Code, Grade, Personnel Accounting Symbol, and Reason Code. Supervisors should routinely check the UMD for accuracy and use it to track their authorized manpower strength. In the event that a unit needs to change an existing requirement on the UMD, an authorization change request with justification is submitted to the servicing manpower organization. Approved changes to the UMD are reflected by an authorization change notice generated by the Manpower Programming and Execution System. 12.21. Manpower and Organization Flight. The installation Manpower and Organization Flight performs a variety of functions to help effectively manage manpower resources. The core competencies of manpower and organization encompass organization structure, requirement determination, program allocation and control, and process improvement. Personnel within the flight provide day-to-day manpower resource management services to include UMD management, assistance with authorization change requests, authorization change notices, and organizational structure changes. Manpower and organization flight personnel also provide other management services, such as performance management, commercial activity services, the Airman Powered by Innovation program, continuous process improvement, and management advisory studies. 12.22 Commercial Services Management. Commercial Services Management is a program designed to improve Air Force functions using a variety of management tools, including competitive sourcing, insourcing, and post-competition accountability. The Major Command Manpower Organization and Resources Office is the manpower function responsible for providing commercial services management oversight at command levels and providing guidance to manpower and organization flights for implementation of the Commercial Services Management Program at the respective wings. The three principal goals of the program are to sustain readiness, improve performance and quality by doing business more efficiently and cost-effectively, and focus available personnel and resources on core Air Force missions. Commercial Services Management will not affect military essential skills or those functions that are inherently governmental. The Air Force Manpower Analysis Agency develops and maintains tools, templates, and guidebooks to enable the field to execute the Commercial Services Management Program, administers the inherently governmental commercial activities inventory, monitors post-competition accountability, and provides field support on commercial services management initiatives. 12.23 Competitive Sourcing Process. Competitive sourcing generates savings by finding more efficient ways to accomplish a particular function. A competitive sourcing study is a public-private competition that compares the total cost of the in-house government operation of an activity to the total cost of private sector performance of the same activity to determine which is the most economical or efficient approach. In a competitive sourcing study, the mission remains essentially unchanged. It is the composition of the workforce that changes. Where blue suiters, military personnel, were initially performing the mission, the resulting service provider will be made up of either civil servants or private sector contract employees. A competitive sourcing study frees up military personnel to perform other core military essential activities. Insourcing. Insourcing is the conversion of a contracted function to Department of Defense civilian or military performance, or vice versa. An insourcing business case analysis compares the cost of a contracted function to the cost of Department of Defense civilian employees to perform the same activity. Included in the business case analysis are certifications validating contract cost, in-house manning, available labor pool, and activity all meet the requirements of a valid and enduring mission requirement. Implementing the program permits the Department of Defense to convert contracts and provide special consideration for using Department of Defense civilian employees to perform functions currently performed by a contractor. This process is applicable when the function 1 has been performed by Department of Defense civilian employees at any time during the previous 10 years. 2 is closely associated with the performance of an inherently governmental function. 3 has been performed pursuant to a contract awarded on a non-competitive basis. And 4 has been determined by a contracting officer to have been performed poorly during the 5 years preceding the date of such determination because of excessive costs or inferior quality. Note: in accordance with the Deputy Secretary of Defense Memorandum for Insourcing Contracted Services Implementation Guidance, contracted functions found to be inherently governmental, exempt from contract performance, unauthorized personal services, or experiencing problems associated with contract administration shall be insourced regardless of cost.